Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Datavyam iti yat danam diyate anupakarine dese kale cha patre cha tat danam satvikam smritam Tatvaryam iti yaddanam Tatavyam iti yaddanam Diyate nupaketa Diyate nupakarine Dese kale cha patre cha Taddanam satvikam smritam. Because it's time's going on, I'll just go right into the translation. Charity given out of duty without expectation of return at the proper time and place and to a worthy person is considered to be in the mode of goodness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the Vedic literature, charity given to a person engaged in spiritual activity is recommended. There is no recommendation for giving charity indiscriminately. Spiritual perfection is always a consideration. Therefore, charity is recommended to be given at a place of pilgrimage, at a lunar or solar eclipse, or at the end of the month, or to a qualified brahmana, or a Vaishnava devotee, or in temples. Such charities should be given without any consideration of return. Charity to the poor is sometimes given out of compassion, but if a poor man is not worth giving charity to, then there is no spiritual advancement. In other words, indiscriminate charity is not recommended in the Vedic literature. So it's Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Nalakaya Chakshusha Militam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada again is very beautifully setting out in his purport and putting everything into context. Because you have charity in the mode of ignorance, charity in the mode of passion, and charity in the mode of goodness. And then you have Sudasattva, which is pure spiritual charity. And pure spiritual charity is the pure spiritual charity that is recommended by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This Harinam Sankirtan. That is the real full-bodied spiritual charity. One cannot think of any intelligent spiritual person who's endeavoring spiritually to become pure, unadulterated, connecting with Krishna as one should, can never think of something higher than what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is bringing to this world. Because it's done in one swipe. Because at the end of the day, charity is meant to help. When people give in charity, the real meaning of charity is to help somebody, properly help them. But we can't know how to properly help people if we don't know anything about spiritual life. It is very simple, ABC. So, as we can see, as practicing devotees, that in this world that we live in, a huge majority of the population are in ignorance. They are just simply moving around. They're born, those 6 stages of development, and they're simply going about their business, looking for some kind of happiness, because that is who we are. Who we are is so beyond what people think one another to be. And the nature, the very core of our being is as marginal energy of Krishna. We have been manifested, because Krishna manifests energy. He manifests the material energy, and he manifests the spiritual energy, the Vaikuntha lokas, where he personally lives, in Krishna Loka. And he also manifests the marginal energy of whom we are that. And the nature of every single individual spiritual spark, the individual soul, is to be a servant. We serve. We don't enjoy. Enjoyment comes automatically when we serve. Okay? But we are Anandamaya. Just like Krishna is Anandamaya. But we are small Anandamayas. We are not Vishnu Tattva, we are Atma Tattva. But we are here simply as minute spiritual sparks. And Prabhupada gives the example of the sand particles on a beach. And if there are sand particles on the beach when the tide comes in, those sand particles get covered over by the water. And when the water recedes, then again they are subjected to be dried out by the sun. And that's just like us. We are marginal energy. We exist between being influenced by the inferior energy. Krishna describes this energy, the material energy, in the Bhagavad-Gita as inferior. It's an inferior energy. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. This is separated energies, and Krishna says, besides this inferior nature, Krishna's calling it inferior. I am not calling it inferior. I'm just repeating the fact that Krishna says in the 7th chapter, besides this inferior nature, there is a superior nature of mind, which are all living entities who are struggling with this inferior energy or material nature and simultaneously sustaining the universe. And what that means is that there is an ecosystem within every universe that is sustained by 8,400,000 different species of life. And the more species that become extinct, and then that's how more unstable things become. Because every species of life has a purpose to it. It is a complete whole. Just like if you read Ishopanishad, Om Punamida Punamidam Punat Punamudachite. Everything, there are so many complete wholes. So the whole purpose is that marginal energy actually is a spiritual energy and belongs eternally in the spiritual kingdom, not in the material kingdom. So while in the material kingdom, we have around us, and Prabhupada says, just like the soul is infinitesimal, it is 1/10,000th tip of a hair in size. Can you imagine? You can't imagine what that size is, because to our eyes it would be invisible. It would be non-existent, really. But that is a spiritual calculation. It actually, you can see it with spiritual eyes. It's a very minute atomic form. But even though it's so small, it has the potency. It has at least 75% of the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every individual soul can destroy planets. We can actually destroy planets. We can create planets. We can become smaller than the small. What else is there, Hansarupa? Can you remember? There are different cities. Can anyone think?
Entering the stone?
I'm not sure. Is that? Yeah. Anyway, I think there are 8 propensities that the soul has. Just like Hiranyakasipu, he's marginal in energy. He's Atma Tattva, he's a very small, minute spark. But he became so powerful, he was able to practically destroy the earth planet by his meditation. And if you can imagine standing on your tippy toes with your hands in the air, and how long did he stand like that? Thousands of years, millions of years. To such an extent, the time was so vast that when Lord Brahma eventually went to look for him, he couldn't find him, because he was covered over by so much, accumulations of time. So the living entity is very, very powerful. But when we're covered over by these separated energies, it's just like clouds covering the sun. Even though the sun is so powerful, as soon as clouds come over, we can't even feel the heat of the sun, what to speak of see the sun. So it's the same principle applying. With these material bodies, that is called what you call a field. Krishna creates a field, and that field consists of 24 elements. And, there is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Then there is the unmanifested material nature, pradhan. And then you have the working senses. So instead of me telling everything, I want someone to say, what are the working senses? Eyes, nose, mouth, ears, skin. That's 5. Right. Sense perceiving. Right. Taste. Smell. Here, we said skin already. We said smell.
Sight, touch.
Touch. Touch.
Hearing.
Sight. Hearing. And then there are the sense objects. Can anyone tell me the sense objects? Sound. No, that's sense perception, that's sense perceiving. So sound. Anyway, there's another 5 or 6. So altogether there's 24 elements, material elements that make up the field of activities. So we've got individual fields of activities, but we've got the overall field of activity, which is the material universe. So when the consciousness of the soul, it's just like a hand going into a glove. When the consciousness fills up these senses, these bodily senses, that's when the false ego kicks in, and then we begin to think that we're this body. And because we're naturally and eternally individuals, we desire differently. It doesn't matter. If you look around this room, you'll never ever see someone exactly the same as you. And that proves that we are individuals. Because the body is simply a conglomeration of desire, both gross and subtle. And that's what makes us think that we're these bodies. And we go around accumulating sense objects on so many different levels. And we enjoy within that field of activities. But the field of activity is not only very limited, but it's fraught with dangers. Because as we're acting within the field, we are accumulating karmic reactions. So we can act what we think is good actions, and we can also act bad actions. And as a result, we'll have karma going on. So desire are the building blocks of our next body. Do you understand? Desires are the building blocks of our next body. If the desires are material, we are building another body for ourselves. So the whole idea is that in the human form of life, and that's why Srila Prabhupada said it's very, very important to understand that the human form of life is an extremely rare form to acquire out of the 8 million other species of life, because 400,000 are different varieties of human beings, human forms. So we can't stop desiring, because that is the nature of who we are and what we do. We are manifested by Krishna to simply desire to please him. Isn't it simple to understand? We're simply here to desire to please Krishna. As I said before, we are Anandamaya Bhyasat. We are pleasure seeking. So we desire and we seek pleasure. We have to, because that's who we are as individual souls, marginal energy. But when those desires are put into the field of activity, the material fields, in individual ways, it causes us great problems. Because we're simply building another body to go into for our next life. So Prabhupada says, this is the crossroads. The human form of life is the crossroads. We've come around 8 million, I don't know, I won't say 400,000 because 400,000 are material forms. And I'm probably, yes, we've been through every single one of those 400,000 if we've been through the 8 million already. So Prabhupada said, why don't you just invest one life? Just try, just one time. You know, you can do what you like. You know, you're independent. Krishna doesn't force you to do anything you don't want to do. We are independent. We have minute independence. Prabhupada says, so invest in this one lifetime your energy to Krishna. So it's said, Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So this Brahmanda, that the soul is constantly within, this Mahatattva, the Brahmanda, the creation of Brahma. And as we know, there are many Brahmas as there are universes. And Brahmas have different heads. This is a 4-headed universe, so it's not very big at all. It's a small universe. Whereas Brahma sometimes has many thousands of heads. And that's because in huge universes within the Mahatattva, there are thousands of directions. So in this particular universe, there's only 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. So we are going from body to body, planet to planet, universe to universe, simply seeking pleasure. But that traveling that we do is desired by us, but is also directed by Krishna. Because Krishna says in 18th chapter, Ishwara Sava Bhutanam Hrideshat Junatistati Brahmanyan Sava Bhutanam Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. He says that I am situated in everyone's heart, and I am directing the wanderings of all living entities who are as if seated on a machine made of material energy. And that's what it is. Actually, you know, we're simply in this machine, this material body. And the modes of material nature, you know, these individual separated energies all combine together to create this incredible machine. Like, for instance, our movements, when we're in the body, we're not doing anything. We're not doing. When you stand up, how do you stand up? How is it possible to stand up? Because you're at 1/10,000th tip of a hair in size. You're situated in the heart, very minute, and you have consciousness which pervades the whole body. So how are we moving around and standing up? How is it possible? And the more we think about this, it's called a phenomenological. It's a big word, but when you reduce it down, it means to become more fully present with what Krishna is telling us in the Bhagavad-Gita. And then when we become more fully present to the mechanics, because this is all about the analytical study of Sankhya philosophy, the difference between matter and spirit. When we study that and become more fully present to it, it's very unique how Krishna has arranged these things, you know. Like when our eyes are rolling or moving about, our eyelids blinking, and different things happen, you know. So, like I'm moving my hands. Hey, look at this, you know. How is that happening? How does it happen? How is the movement happening? Who's doing that? Just like a puppet, when you have a puppet, there's a puppet master, isn't there? Someone pulling the strings. So Krishna says that he is directing the wanderings of all living entities. So, how important it is, now that we're in the human form of life, Rupa Goswami recommends sadhu sangha, that we must stay together as groups, because if we individually try to become Krishna conscious on our own, it's more of a struggle. Whereas when we're in the association of other Vaishnava devotees, it's a lot easier. Like, there's no question, when we're living in Vrindavan, there's no question, there's not even a thought that comes into the mind that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't go to Mangalati, you shouldn't go to Prabhupada's Arati, you shouldn't chant Hare Krishna, you shouldn't take prasadam, you shouldn't do this. It doesn't register. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. So, this is the real charity. Once you know yourself, once you know, in the 13th chapter, Nature, the Enjoyer in Consciousness, that chapter 13, is very beautifully explained by Srila Prabhupada about the field of activity, the living entity, and the supersoul. So once we understand the nature of this material field of activity and how we're placed within it as a different energy, the marginal as opposed to the material energy, then we can turn to Krishna within the heart. Because Krishna is the he is the Vishnu Tattva. And he is simply not only directing our journeys through life, because Krishna, the purpose of the Supersoul is out of love. Supersoul is an expansion of Krishna that goes to everyone's heart, in everyone's heart, situated. It doesn't leave us because Krishna's waiting for us simply to turn to him. And that's simply the process of bhakti-yoga. That's all. So, if we become charitable, if we know how to execute charity properly, by first of all concentrating on ourselves and developing our own consciousness and knowledge, vijnanam, we have to, side by side, while we're chanting Hare Krishna, we have to study Srila Prabhupada's books, because then we're mighty armed. Like Arjuna, tattvavitu mahabaho, gunakama vibhagayo. Krishna, he called Arjuna tattvavit. Arjuna was a strapping 7-foot warrior. Tattvavitu mahabaho, he was mighty armed, mahabaho. But it wasn't with weapons. We know that Arjuna was a very powerful Kshatriya. You know, he was crucial to the army of the Pandavas, crucial figure. Krishna was driving his chariot. But in this particular context, he was tattvavit. He was mighty armed with knowledge. Knowledge. So that is our position. We have to become tattvavit tu mahabaho. And in that way, then we're fearless. We can be fearless in the distribution of charity, of distributing the holy name. And we are all from different places in the world. No one lives in the same place, I don't think. You know? Prabhu, where are you from? Laguna Beach. Where are you from? London. There you go. Laguna Beach, London. Yourself? Delhi. She's in Delhi. And yourself?
Indonesia.
Orissa. There you go.
Indonesia.
Oh, Indonesia. Sorry. Indonesia. See? So we all have a responsibility. Because initiation, when you take it, is everyone initiated in this room? Who's not initiated? And it's not, I'm not asking you to put your hand up to feel embarrassed in any way or anything like that. This has got nothing to do with that. We're here together as a group. So the idea is that we go into contract with the spiritual master. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire submissively and render service, because the spiritual master has seen the truth. So the idea is that the spiritual master is the transcendental gardener. And what the transcendental gardener does, he plants the seed of devotion in the heart of the conditioned soul. And then the contract is that you have to become responsible for the growth of that seed. You have to water it. You have to tender it. You have to keep the weeds away. And that is the responsibility. The Guru, what he does, he fulfills his side of the contract by giving us the seed. First of all, there's the faith in the disciple. The spiritual master has faith that this disciple is going to become good. He's actually going to do the right thing. Otherwise, it pains the spiritual master. So when you go into contract with the spiritual master, you promise to water the seed that he's planted in the heart. And then slowly but surely, if we follow the instructions of the spiritual master by the not committing offenses, we look at those 10 offenses to the chanting of the holy name. If we can avoid them, even in the clearing stage of chanting Hare Krishna, the more we avoid those 10 offenses, the more quickly we can chant offenselessly. And by chanting offenselessly, then we can really feel the connection with Krishna in the heart. So that is the prime responsibility of the disciple, is to look after one's seed and grow it so it becomes a plant, a creeper. And as we've read in the Shastras, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that creeper grows. And you won't see it with material eyes. It's nothing to do with the field. Forget that. Forget the field now. We're not talking about the field. We're talking about the spiritual connection through the spiritual master to the super soul within the heart. And that's the charity. Once we feel it ourselves, once Prabhupada, he was sitting underneath a tree in Hyderabad, and he had 5 or 6 of his senior disciples sitting around him. And Prabhupada said to them, how do you really know that Krishna is God? And immediately the disciples were putting forward their suggestions. Prabhupada was saying, neti, 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 neti. He was saying, no, not this, not this, not this, not this. And, they were running out of ideas, They were like, I wonder what I should say next, And then there was a sannyasi. His name was Mahamsa Swami. And he was in charge of Hyderabad in those days. And I remember this was all written down, recorded. He was sitting on the edge of the group, and he was reluctant to say, because he didn't want Prabhupada to say no. He was a bit nervous to say anything. And finally, the urge was so strong to say that he said it. And he said, Srila Prabhupada, when I chant Hare Krishna, or I'm singing in a kirtan, I feel Krishna. And Prabhupada said, that is right. That is right. Another time, so Krishna, we read from scripture, and then again, it's all about Shraddha, faith. If we have faith in the scripture, in the Shastra, and it says that Krishna is none different from his name, if we chant sincerely with feelings, we will feel Krishna. And that's what Prabhupada is saying. So this disciple, he was correct. He says, I genuinely feel Krishna. Just like there was another time when Prabhupada was preaching in London, and it was a famous hall. I forget the name of the hall.
Albert Hall?
No, it's a nice hall, that Albert Hall, beautiful.
Conway Hall?
Conway Hall, is it? Conway? Yes, I think it was Conway. And this is quite early on. This is very early, around 1972, 71, like this. And Prabhupada had finished his lecture, and he was inviting questions. And there was this lady, she was in her 50s, and she was a Buddhist. She had a beautiful Buddhist attire. She was dressed, and it wasn't shabby in any way. It was just, she was very meticulous about her dress. And she said to Srila Prabhupada, how do we see Krishna? How do we get to know Krishna? We know that you know Krishna, but how do we know Krishna? And Prabhupada said, well, he was quiet for about 30 seconds, and then he looked up and he said, there's 3 pathways. First pathway is Shraddha. And if you read Bhagavad-Gita, there's a whole chapter dedicated to Shraddha, divisions of faith. The whole chapter. I think it's chapter 17. And not only that, but Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is intimately united with me in yoga. So Prabhupada says faith is, it's the foundation of your Krishna consciousness. Then number 2, Prabhupada said, the hypothesis. The hypothesis, which in context was the hypothesis of the process of devotional service. So in other words, he's saying, if one just follows the process. You experiment with it, because that's what hypothesis is. It's an experimentation of a theory, right? You apply it and to come to a conclusion. So if you apply Krishna consciousness with faith, then the third pathway kicks in. And the third pathway is direct perception. In other words, you will see Krishna with faith in the process of bhakti-yoga, devotional service to the spiritual master. You will see Krishna face to face. And that's a fact. Because we had a living person. Srila Prabhupada would always see Krishna face to face. That's true. He was a living example of everything, from when he was pulling a Jagannath cart when he was 3 years old to when he died. Prabhupada taught us how to die. You know, I had the fortune. Sometimes I think it wasn't the fortune, because who likes to see that spiritual master leave? Lord Chaitanya, when he was speaking with Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya said to Ramananda Roy, "What is the most painful thing in this world?" And Ramananda replied, "The demise of the spiritual master is the most painful thing." And Prabhupada said, before he was so not able to say anything, Prabhupada said, "Don't think you won't have to go through this death business, this going out. And it can be a very difficult process, because everything starts to malfunction even before you realize it. And the whole idea is to try to think of Krishna at the time of death. And you've got to be fixed up to really apply yourself in that sense, because you never know. We don't know when our time's up, when we breathe the last breath. We don't know. How do we know? It can happen in such difficult circumstances. I've known devotees being killed in car crashes. So the point of this talk tonight is, it's about real charity. And what's the point of giving charity that is not going to help you develop your love of God? Because by developing that affection of bhakti, it takes us out of this whole equation. We don't have to think. People, they're so attached. People, like for instance, are attached to making money. They can't get enough of money. Money, 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 money. Krishna says, one of the 4 liberations, I will give you equal wealth. Krishna is offering equal wealth if we want it. Of course, Krishna he'll give us equal wealth in the moment, and then he can create another 100 times more wealth for himself. That's the nature of Krishna. We can never be equal to Krishna in any way, shape or form. But Krishna says, I will give you equal wealth. So we have to take that in proper context. We can have the same bodily features as Krishna. If we're not happy, you can see people, how unhappy they are with their bodies all over the world, especially the ladies. They're always looking for, and I'm not talking about the devotee ladies, I'm talking about kamis. You know, as soon as they get little wrinkles in their skin, it's all the cream, and, you know, and then the Botox, and, you know, and then facelifts and all kinds of things, you know. It's like, there's no end to it. And then the dieting, you know. It's become so crazy, you know, how the media, the use of the media in the material world to hypnotize people, to say you're too fat, you should diet, and if you want the best results, you've got to pay X amount of money and blah blah blah, and it's like thousands and hundreds of thousands of different companies saying the same thing, only giving a different product. So, and then all the time, the body is dwindling, slowly, surely, dwindling. So it doesn't matter what kind of charity, material charity you try to give, it's useless. It's a useless endeavor. You know, it's no good giving someone who's begging money on the street money, because as soon as your back's turned, they'll go and buy cigarettes and smoke themselves, smoking. You know, can't be trusted. And anyway, even Prabhupada says, if you don't offer the food to Krishna, if you don't offer that, it's sin anyway. It's considered sin, so that's not going to help them, is it? It's only Krishna consciousness, you know. That's the real charity. How long does the class go on for? 15 more? Okay, so, you know, there was enough content in that, just in that one small purport. We could probably go on talking about it, but is there anybody that would like to ask a question or comment? Probably.
I came in your class a bit late, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
But I picked up on the point that you mentioned about Prabhupada. I don't think this won't happen to you.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book at the moment called The Final Exam by Giriraj Swami.
Right.
It's about death,
Right.
and it's very instructive.
Mm.
My question to you is that apparently devotees suffer quite a bit before they pass through the body. And even Srila Prabhupada, well, you know, he's a pure devotee, he's passed away from all that, and he's suffering. Surely Krishna knows that this person is sold out to him 110%. Why does a devotee have to suffer at the end? He's fully giving himself to Krishna.
It's the transition. People will misunderstand. If you all of a sudden have a transition, and I understand that you're relating it to a pure devotee, you know, who has done so much service and like this. But Prabhupada said that he came as a Parivrajakacharya sannyasi, even though he was a Shaktavesha Advaita. Shaktavesha Advaitas are also Uttama. You know, they're Uttama Adhikari, they're not, you know. Uttama Adhikaris, they can't preach. You won't have a pure Uttama Adhikari preaching in the material world, because Uttama Adhikaris, they always see everyone as greater than themselves. So, what happens? Prabhupada says he takes the body of a Parivrajakacharya sannyasi ultimately, he arrives at that position. But with the consciousness of Madhyamadikari, because he has to discriminate. He avoids the demons. He sees demons. You have to. Madhyamadikari means you see the demon, you see the innocent, you see the devotee. Uttama Adhikaris don't see it like that. They just see that everyone's greater than them. So to come into the material world as an avatar, which Prabhupada was, he came down, he's in that position. Now then, even though Prabhupada's body is spiritual, because he's using it 10% for the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, still, the body is the body. You know, it has bones, flesh, skin, just like any other body, right? It's just that it's a pure body rather than an impure body. So the point is, leaving that body is painful. In other words, Prabhupada describes, and even not just Prabhupada, but there was a great devotee, King Kulashekar, and there's a beautiful verse saying, please let me die now, while I'm young, while my body's young, and my mind is agile or active to be able to take hold of those pains and displeasures that I have to endure while I'm leaving the body. Of course, the soul is not really... See, what happens when the soul leaves the body, it's not the soul that's suffering. It's actually the body. It's the body breaking down. And that's the pain of it. The soul pushes through, right? But we can't see that. Do you understand? We can't see the soul leaving the body. Not seeing, but we can't even experience it. When Srila Prabhupada was lying in his bed, we only saw Srila Prabhupada's body. We didn't see Prabhupada all of a sudden a glowing, speck in the room. We didn't see it because we don't have the eyes to see. All we saw was the body starting to malfunction. Because if the soul is not there controlling the body, then the body is just adjusts itself slowly, just like a bag of potatoes. If you're carrying a bag of potatoes, and say the potatoes fall over, the bag of potatoes, all the potatoes leave, then the sack is just, it's different, it's a different shape altogether. So all we're experiencing, the pain, is in the body itself, leaving, It's got nothing to do with the soul. The soul doesn't experience pain and pleasure. The soul is the soul, right? So as the soul is leaving the body, the body just crumples up and gets deformed. Like when Prabhupada had left, his body took on a whole different look to it. When Prabhupada was healthy and he was preaching, Prabhupada was full of vitality, But when Prabhupada in those last moments was leaving his body took on a whole different look to it. And when we eventually brought Prabhupada's body into the temple from his room, we had to tie Srila Prabhupada's head to the Vyasasana so it wouldn't just fall down like that, because there was nothing there. It was just a bag, right? That's all. It was a bag of pure material energy. That's what it was. So that is everyone's departure. That is everyone's departure. And Srila Prabhupada actually, he left very peacefully. Prabhupada left very peacefully. I've companioned people at the time of death 6 or 7 times. And I've seen people crying, sometimes screaming, sometimes, making all kinds of noises, But Prabhupada's was peaceful. That's my perception. Because I was sitting at his bed. I was sitting at Prabhupada's feet when Prabhupada left. I was there for about 5 hours sitting there. Because no one wanted Prabhupada to leave. And I found myself, I was holding Prabhupada's feet, and at some point I thought, what am I doing holding Prabhupada's feet? Why should I give Prabhupada more trouble? But then that turned into almost like me catching his ankles and not wanting Prabhupada to leave. Do you understand? I was trying to keep Prabhupada here. It's a funny, I can't explain it. It's something that I did in the moment. And I was trying to, because no one wanted Prabhupada to leave. The whole room was so charged with despair. We were all overwhelmed with grief that our spiritual master was leaving this world. And he had done so much in 10 years, what Prabhupada had achieved. So to see such a, and that is the wonders of Vapu, to actually see a spiritual master performing devotional service for his spiritual master. It's a wonderful thing. And that's why I was talking to Bhakti Charu Maharaj about this when he was here. And we had a similar mentality when it came to Prabhupada's disappearance day. And we were both in the room at the same time. And every time that day comes around again, I feel, I don't know, I have this sense of not wanting to be there really again. I love to see Prabhupada in so many other ways, but not in that state of leaving again. Because Lord Ramananda Roy, he informed Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya said, what is the most painful thing? And Ramananda Roy said, the demise of the spiritual master. And it was very painful. I hope somewhere I've satisfied, I don't know. Is there anything else? Yes, problem.
You were giving example this what it is just like a field of activities.
Yeah.
And we cannot move our hands or hands or anything. They are just like puppet and the puppet is leading us however he wants.
Yeah.
So my thinking or my speculation or whatever you say, that I think everything is done by the Lord. We are just his puppet, and our will like just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, you handle me roughly or doubly as you like. So I feel also that as he likes, he is helping each living entity to do whatever they want. So we are not actually the doer. The doer is he is doing everything.
Yeah.
I feel in that manner that he is helping us in all the activities, whatever activities we are doing. Just we are coming to the temple, we are coming from another army. This activity on my own, I think I cannot do it. But he is the one who is helping me to
Yes.
and come for the program.
Yes. Yes.
So I feel that he is the doer and I am just puppeting his hand.
See, Krishna's in the heart. He's Ishvara Sava Bhutanam Hridesha Junatistati. He's director. He's directing the wanderings. But in terms of all the movements of the material body, that's more controlled by the demigods. The blinking of the eyes, whatever movement there is, you know. It's a very, very complex machine. You know, it's an incredible design, the material body. How can anyone think? We take it for granted, the material body. But when you think about it, it's an incredible design. And the thing is, we're all uniquely individual. If we look at the shape of everybody in this room, and the eyes, the color of the eyes, the nose, Srotram Chakshur Spasanam Cha Rasanam Granam Eva Cha Adhistayan Manashchayan Vishayan Upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body or another material body, attains a certain type of ear, nose, tongue, sense of touch, which are all grouped around the mind. And they thus enjoy a particular set of sense objects. So, you know, we accumulate different bodies simply by the desires that we have. The desires are the building blocks of our next body. If we desire materially, we will have a material body. If we desire spiritually, we will have a spiritual body. It's as simple as ABC.